From sunny Southern California, this is the Executive Housekeeper 101 from HousekeepingRehab.com. Here now is your Executive Housekeeper, Abel Josephson.
All right, you're back. Well, let's fire somebody. We're going to have a termination in our department. How do we do it? How do we prepare for it? When do we terminate? What's our backup? Termination is the most stressful and irritating and the most put off thing. Oh my God, people put off terminations. HR does not want to have to terminate. You don't want to have to terminate. Your general manager is putting pressure on you. Sorry, you have to work with what you got. It's hard to get good people. We can't terminate them. That's because they're not on their game. They don't know how to set it up. They don't know how to have a termination be just as smooth as a baby's bottom and just run so nice and have elegance and style and maturity and success. They don't know how to prepare for it. And how do you prepare for it? You prepare for it every single day you are in that housekeeping department. And now keep in mind, I don't tell everything that there is to know. There's not enough time. You've got to take these things that I'm giving you, and all I'm giving you is a frame of reference, a starting point when you're new. What's my priority? Where can I just give me a launching pad so I can at least launch in an organized way, and then I can figure it out as I go. When I got my first apartment, 485 rooms, I had never cross-trained in housekeeping. I didn't know one single thing about them except there was this group of strangers that came and went, and I couldn't talk the same language with them, and they somehow got all these rooms ready. Yeah, I learned from the dirt to the sky, from the ground up. So did you, from the ground up. The school of hard knocks. Okay, I'm gonna talk about laying groundwork. This is very important, and I just wanna remind you, it's a good time, before you finish watching this video or after you watch it, go right back to the video, Employee Handbook and Documentation. I just talked about the handbook and documentation, and it wasn't that deep, but it was rich, content rich. That's a great sister video message to this one that you're watching now. If you just click on that little link right there, you can access that, but watch it later. Okay, I'm going to show you something. The scene is set, right? You're in the office. You have a supervisor standing right there. I always had little bitty tiny offices, so I always sat down at my desk. My desk was never in between me and employees ever. I put it on the side so I can turn and be face to face with them exactly like I am now face to face with you. Supervisor usually stood right there. Too many people sitting down in a small office is bad form. And then my associate, my employee would be sitting right there in the chair usually. Here we go. Here's how you terminate somebody. The second that you sit them down in that chair and you close that door, you turn to that employee and you say these words: the hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. Let me give you that again. The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment with the hotel. See how simple that is? The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. I don't terminate anybody. It's not me. Oh, hell no, it's not me. I represent these people. And this person doesn't line up with their expectations. On behalf of those who wrote the expectations, they are now asking me to terminate you or terminate anybody who does not live up to the expectations. We all fall short now and again and have mistakes. It's the cost of doing business. But when somebody just refuses to get on board, and it's just, when you're surprised when they do it right, they got a problem. If they make a mistake and you're surprised they made that mistake, that person was late, really? I've never, I don't write them up. I don't say anything. You okay? You're a little behind today, but we're good. All right, get plugged in. We'll get you going. They don't have a problem. We're talking about the problem child who's doing the bad boy boogie all over town in your department. It's time to go. The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. Boom, now you're done. It's over. Termination is over. Everything that happens after that statement, you are talking to a former employee. Why is that important? All discussion is done. It's over. We've already discussed all along the way here to get us to this point. And if you handle your business right, when they're sitting in that chair and that supervisor witnessing is standing next to you and you're sitting at your desk, they should know exactly why they were sat down. They should know exactly what you're gonna say. They should know the outcome. They should know, or you didn't do your job. When you do your job, termination is a simple statement. The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. Now, it doesn't matter what you say. You're a former employee. It's over. See how quick that is? So what happens is people want to get into these conversations. Well, how you doing? Well, we've been looking at your little papers and your write-ups, and, we've done our best to be patient with you, and you don't need all that. They ought to know all that. Your employees are career professionals. They're cognitively in tune with what's going on. They're not stupid. They're adults. They understand. They remember how many times you wrote them up. They remember how many times you stopped them in the hall. They remember other employees complaining about them. They know what's going on. So they go, what? And they're crying. No. They should know if you did your job. So all you need is the statement. Once the statement is made, game over. I am now talking to a former employee, which means I don't have to explain to a former employee anything that's now currently going on in this hotel. I don't have to make excuses. I don't have to defend the resort or the hotel. I don't have to defend me. It's over. You've been terminated. You may now go and get your things and exit the property. Most of the time, they go down the hall to the break room and they poison and they bitch and they moan and they blame and they tell everybody, you better watch your ass, better watch your ass, better watch your ass. One statement and it's over. The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. We're going to ask you to rise now and go obtain your things and put them away and get what you need and then exit the property. We've had many conversations and we've come to a difficult but permanent decision. You are now terminated. And they go, well, what about, sorry, conversations are over. It's just over. We're done. Just be gentle, but don't go off into explaining yourself. Get it out of the way the second they sit down in that office. You terminate them immediately. Get the verbiage out, get the language out, get it, quit it, and keep a cool head. So the problem that you have with terminations is fear. You're afraid that they're gonna cause a big stink and get angry and it's gonna be super tense and emotional and oh my God, you're just not into that. I'll show you how to overcome that fear. The second thing is that you are afraid that if we terminate, we're going to be short-staffed. Trust me, you're better off short-staffed with the right crew than you are fully staffed with a couple of, troublemakers. The third thing that most people are afraid of is that they will cause problems and people in the department will get mad at them. I'll have more people mad. That's not really true. Most people in your department that are pulling the weight, doing the job, they're out there every day getting the standards met. Yeah, man, knuckle down, buckle, get it, quit it, and keep a cool head. They're doing it successfully. They don't appreciate when you let somebody get away with not doing it. They're all about the termination. When it comes to standards, you are literally defending their standards. They are happy that you are terminating that person. If you're having the problem with it, trust me, they're having a problem with it also. And they look to you in a figure, to protect them and to honor their integrity. You honor their integrity. You respect what they do by terminate somebody that just won't do it. So don't worry about those three things. You'll be short-staffed, people will be angry with you, it's going to be very stressful and emotional, and that the people will be, turn against you. No. Okay, here we get down to brass tacks. Termination begins with the employee handbook. Remember I said go back and watch that video on employee handbook and documentation. This is your constitution. You're like a president. You're like a governor, right? You're like a senator. You're like a leader in your country who swears to defend the Constitution. I know my employee handbook like the back of my hand. This is it. And when employees sit down and they got attendance problems, or they got, they're being abusive to others, or they're not meeting standards, when they sit down, every time they sit down, I read out of this book to them. My book is worn out usually. This one's in pretty good shape. I think I had to give me a new one. I read it to them so that they realize I'm upholding this. I'm not just making a bunch of rules that are hard to live under and being mean and ugly to people because I'm a mean, ugly manager who makes you obey the rules or you get in trouble. This is all where it's at. Secondly, underneath that, your standard operation Bible, your standard operating procedures notebook. In here is every procedure outlined In here is all of the training in writing. And I mean, I read this to people. First, I read them the employee handbook, if that matters. Then I read this to them. When I'm documenting a conversation. When somebody's done a great job, I'll read out of the manual, I'll read out of the expectation here, and I will tell them, congratulations, you are meeting our expectations. Thank you so much. Everything that they want me to do and to ask of you, you're doing. And I can in turn to my people and go, I'm doing what you're asking to do. I'm pulling the flowers. I'm pulling on the gifts. I'm getting people to rise to their occasion and meet standards and be successful for themselves so they can keep their job and keep on rocking the free world. Okay, I'm going on. Let me tell you how to do documentation, right? Most people, when they think of documentation on our way to termination, they think of it this way. When I want to terminate somebody, I have to have 3 write-ups, and on the 4th write-up, I can terminate. But the problem is, they have to start that thing from scratch. Okay, this person's a real problem. We're gonna have to terminate this employee. Okay, now I've already let all this stuff go by. All this water's flowed under the bridge, and I can't go get it back. And I'm gonna talk about the balance of positive and negative in documentation. And I'm gonna go deep into that, just wait with me. When I'm coming down the hallway and I find out that there's a guest room door and there's a houseperson card, a houseman card outside that, where's my houseman? There's the card, I require all my doors be closed while work's being done. I go in and I see the houseman, spinning his little rag, and I see the housekeeper leaning on the counter and they're chatting. Well, not in my department. We got stuff to do. We have productivity that has to be met. So I pull this houseman out. Let's say, for the sake of this message, let's call him Mr. Farber. James Farber. If that's your name, I'm not responsible for that. I just need a name for this video. Please don't write me a letter and say you used my name without permission. It's just any name, Joe Smith, whatever. I'm gonna use James Farber. I don't even know a James Farber. I've never had a Farber last name in my department. It's at random. Work with me, people. I pull James out and I say, James, here's the dealio. If you're in that room, you're doing your work and then you get out. You do not go in the room for socializing or visiting. That's what you can do in the lunchroom. That's what you can do on your break. That's what you can do at the bus stop when you're on your way home, whatever. Stay out of the rooms. These ladies are under a time schedule. Please stay out of the rooms for socializing, right? Drop your stuff in their closet or on their cart and go on. Unless they call you to come help strip or something like that, it'll be obvious. I'm going to talk about timestamp and how important that is. It's the most important thing in documentation. Hang on, I'll get to that. At 4:22 p.m. on April 3rd or whatever, I spoke with Mr. Farber. I found him doing this activity. I made these comments. This was his response, blah, 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 blah. And I just jot it down and I go on. I might have 3 of these per day where I tell somebody, hey, don't forget, do not use that elevator, use that elevator. Here we go. And I'm walking off from that conversation. Spoke with, Miss Benitez. Miss Benitez was told at 4:52 p.m., April 3rd, please do not use the guest elevator, only use the service elevator, blah, blah, blah. Now, remember, I told you that the first half of my day is administration, the second half of my day is in rooms, up on floors, which is where I encounter these situations that I have to document. All I'm doing is documenting. The next morning, while it's still fresh on my mind, I pull up a Word document that I have for each and every employee. I spoke with Miss Benitez yesterday. I'm gonna pull up the Word document out of her file and I'm gonna put on there April 23rd at 4:52 p.m. Spoke with Miss Benitez. Please use the service elevator. Do not use the guest elevators as you travel from floor to floor. Bing. She said, yes, that's fine, no problem. I might document for Miss Benitez, for example, 12 different things, and 4 of them I have like 3 times I've told her. Well, do I take immediate action? Only if I want to, only if I see this is a trend that this person will not comply with. And this is a regulation she will not comply with. Then I will sit her down and I will pull out a documentation of conversation that HR recognizes. I got it from them, they should recognize it. I sit with a supervisor who is going to witness thing, and I say, look, I just want to document that we've had this conversation. You and I have spoken about it a couple of times. I may have 2 or 3 pages of just little conversations where I've corrected you. Do I do something about it? Only if the situation requires. But when I need a situation to be changed, guess what? Over the course of 3 months, I haven't let any of this pass me by. And when I sit down a beautiful career professional employee, they will respect the fact that I pay attention to these things, and there's no argument. When I tell you, I told you this on April 3rd at 4:52 p.m. I've only had conversations verbally with them. Now I'm going to collect them all and put them on one documentation. So instead of having to get 3 write-ups, hell, I got 1 write-up with 3 different dates of activity that need to be addressed. It's content rich. This is a stepping stone, not a stumbling stone. So let's put an end to this, you and me, and let's go on. Do you have any questions? If you need something, let me know. But don't just go off and do your own thing and do it sideways, all right? Come on. They should walk around or should walk out of your department going, okay, yeah, I get it, you're right. Thank you, Mr. Abel, all right. And all right, now, by the way, your beds are brilliant. I always tell them 2 or 3 things about what's reality about their performance, and it's not all bad. If you bring up something negative, you better have 2 or 3 things, but don't worry about this. This is great. Your attendance is amazing, but this one area, come on, we'll work together. Let's get you back up there. It's good-natured, it's lighthearted, it's just the cost of doing business. Okay, so when I need to terminate somebody, I've got all of the groundwork laid. They don't even know I'm laying the groundwork, but I am because that's my job. And then when I need it, I can put 2 or 3 examples with date and time, conversation, and notes about their response. Now watch this. Let me show you how proper documentation should read when you present documentation of conversations to your Director of Human Resources. And remember, Human Resources, people think they're supposed to do this, document the problem. No, that's you, Executive Housekeeper. You provide the documentation for them. They simply oversee that you've done your work and laid your groundwork, and then they'll back you up. You must have HR on your side. And if you think you're gonna go to them and they're gonna have to sit down with the employee and try to straighten them out, they're going to screw it up. They don't even know that person. They see them in the hallway. Hello, Carmenita, how you doing? Hello, Alfonso. Hello, Mr. Benitez. That's their job. They're just ambassadors of love, and that's great. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, where the brass tacks, where the rubber hits the road, that's you. And if you have it, they back you up 100% of the time. And if it goes to a labor dispute, guess what? You have it. You have all of that. They look at it and they go, he's got all this. This was your problem. They're right. You're wrong. Okay, so here's how proper documentation should look. I'm going to take the example, Mr. Farber, Mr. James Farber. I find him just socializing with room attendants in the room with the door closed. No siree, Bob. You have no idea how that female housekeeper feels about having this male house person, this houseman, in their rooms. They may not be strong enough as an individual to tell them no. So they chat and they feel intimidated and they're getting behind, causes them stress. Then they're late finishing their rooms. Then they get in trouble with the department because it stresses, guests waiting in the lobby for rooms. And people won't rise up and protect themselves and fly their own flag. And I understand that. That's why I'm the protector of the guidelines and regulations. So it flows not only technically in terms of turning rooms and procedures, but it flows amongst the hearts of the people. It's my job to pay attention to their sense and sensibilities and watch out when somebody's being abused in some level. Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you how to write the documentation on a write-up for Mr. Farber, who a couple of times I found him in the rooms. Have a little social time with the room attendants. Here we go. Write things from the viewpoint of the person who will be reading your documentation. The verbiage should be formal and as brief as possible, yet disclosing clear and factual details. When referring to yourself in the conversation, simply identify yourself as the department manager. Refer to the employees with the proper prefix such as Mr. or Ms. and use their last name only. One of the most important things that should be present in your documentation is the time of day that the coaching or event occurred. The time of day is the secret ingredient to accurate and responsible documentation. Here's an example of professional documentation. On January 9th at 2:41 p.m., the department manager encountered Mr. Farber, a houseperson, conversing with a room attendant while she was actively doing her duties inside of a guest room with the room door closed. When Mr. Farber was spoken to by the department manager about this issue, Mr. Farber expressed negative body and facial language and made this statement to the department manager. The statement was this: "You need to talk to Mr. Johnson as well. He does it all of the time." The department manager then instructed Mr. Farber that this discussion was about his performance and other employees would not be discussed. The department manager explained to Mr. Farber that time management is of the essence and the room attendant should not be slowed down by social visits or random non-work-related conversations and interruptions. The department manager explained to Mr. Farber that time management is of the essence. The instruction was given to Mr. Farber that when he enters a guest room, many times the room attendants do not want to be rude to him, so they slow down and have a conversation. Mr. Farber was asked to respect what they do and to avoid time management interference. Mr. Farber simply said, "Okay, whatever," and he turned and continued down the hallway without any obvious agreement to the instructions. At 9:30 a.m. January 11th, the same coaching was also given to the other two housepersons, Mr. Dominguez and Ms. Farr, regarding the same information. Both verbally agreed with the guideline. All right, so let me point out what is the most important thing about documentation of conversation. When you're just making little notes that you've told people things and corrected things and reminded of things as you're on the floors every afternoon. When you're coming down the hall and you see people, you jot that stuff down, then you put it in a computer organized. The executive housekeeper, this is a deeper soul. This is a disciplined individual. Now, most important, the timestamp. When HR, when a labor panel, when your general manager, whoever looks at your documentation, the most important thing is that, hey, oh my God, you wrote on there, I spoke to them at 3:56 p.m., 8:32 a.m., 9:59 a.m., 6:22 a.m. in the laundry. I always put the location. You got to put the location in there. That timestamp shows you're paying attention to detail. It's an optic. It speaks volumes of your discipline and your integrity. You must have been paying attention to it. You must not have made it up because you wrote down the exact time. You know who taught me how to write these non-personal, non-emotional, third-party view of documentation of employee conversations? He was the director of security at a 5-star golf resort I worked at with a major brand. He was a former police officer, and he told me I had to write so many reports at the end of my day. The paperwork was crazy. Everybody I talked to, I had to write this and that and this and that, and I had to review every conversation. And I found out that putting the time that I had the conversation, it spoke of accuracy and diligence and discipline and correctness and, these things. Now, it's very important when you write documentation, you remove yourself out of it. The department manager spoke with Mr. Farber. The person reading it is visualizing the manager there and the employee here. Black and white, objective. There's no emotions described. It's just the manager stated this. The employee responded. The manager returned comments that stated this. The employee responded this way. It happened on this day at 4:32 p.m. That's all you need, because the person that's going to read it doesn't need to be colored by emotions and anger and fear and offense, to be offended. He just needs to know this was trained with this employee on January 3rd, and here's the training in writing where he signed it. On January 29th, the employee was spoken to again up on the floors at 10:37 a.m. in the hallway in front of room 405. It was re-explained to him verbally after he was seen doing that which is not according to training. You let the reader fill in all the blanks as to whether you should be offended or not. Right? You write it from their viewpoint. They just want to know what happened, what was said, black and white, End of story. Documentation 101, baby. And you collect it. You're constantly collecting it. Why? You're forming a dossier on your enemies so you can bring them down in a glorious and triumphant way one day with a termination? No, you're just walking along the path with them and documenting these things. So when you got to dial it in and screw down the screws and really get their attention, guess what? You don't have to start from scratch. Starting from scratch is why your department is in chaos. And then when it comes time, well, now I got to start from scratch. I got to start looking for something and jump on him every time he makes a mistake. That is going after somebody. That looks real personal. That looks real intimidating. See the difference? I think you do. It's part of decency to people to just walk along the path with them and tighten up the reins just a little bit. The fallacy is that people think HR is supposed to bring them into HR and they do all this. Now, HR doesn't want all this. They're filing papers all the time and filling out insurance forms and advising people on how to get their 401k taken care of. This is all you, executive housekeeper. Once a week with the supervisor standing there, I set the employee down, I close the little door, I offer the traditional bottle of water, I have the tissues out in case we have crying, and I think of what are the strong points of this employee, and I pull out a write-up, and I write them up. I document that their beds are priceless, precious, and perfect. I write down that their attendance is flawless. And when they are late, they report that they are late and are responsible for their attendance. I write down whatever is a strong point of theirs, and I encourage them to continue this. And I do what? I slide it across the table and I have them what? Sign it. And then I have the witness of the supervisor. What's this do? This lets that employee know this supervisor knows you do good. It does a lot of healing there. This person knows I recognize it enough to write you up for the good stuff that you do. And where does this go? Straight to human resources for their file. After a certain amount of time, maybe this employee kind of goes south and I've got to terminate them. And when I present my package of documentation, because HR will send me an email, can you send me any documentation on conversations and corrections and coachings and counselings that you have for this employee? I'll need it before I can approve a termination. What do I have? I have 2 or 3 actual write-ups that are not good for them. I have 3 or 4 write-ups where I've sat them down and said, you do good here though. You got this right. We encouraged you to continue doing that behavior and to practice these guidelines and you're doing well, oops, right? That's not good. But this is good and that's good. I give them a full, well-rounded package of documentation on that employee. So after I've given them 2 or 3 positive, documented, performance excellence type reports, I'm not talking about an annual review, this is a write-up. And then you sit down for a write-up, it's gonna be easy to take, it's just gonna be an oops, and not an ouch. Keep them stable, keep them balanced. These are people's lives. And when you terminate somebody, make sure you remind them and do this for them, be decent. You're terminated, but you're gonna need to work again. You have your next employer, potential employer, call me. Here's the number of my office direct. Here's my email address. I'm gonna give you a very good reference. I'll never mention these things. I'm here to support you in your life. I want you to work again. Just because you were not a rock star here doesn't mean you're not going to be a rock star over there, right? You can be a rock star in this department, go to work for another company and just be lousy, not fit in with their program and have problems when you were great here. Always support people, be decent, be kind and caring. Let your kindness overwhelm your magnitude. The executive housekeeper is a deeper soul. So is that everything? I think that's everything. How to terminate. You sit down and boom, the second you get them in the office, you terminate them verbally. The hotel has reached the difficult but permanent decision to terminate your employment. And it should be no question as to why they got there. There should be no argument. When I've done my job, they look at me and go, yeah, I get it. You're right. And then help them on their way. Always thinking about how you can help people as an executive housekeeper.
The hotel and hospitality industry is a type of entertainment and a form of show business. Thanks for visiting the Executive Housekeeper 101 with Abel Josephson from housekeepingrehab.com.